If Emily Parker wanted to disappear, why did she leave behind the one clue Vincent Moretti was guaranteed to find? At 6:10 on a cold Chicago morning, Daniel Brooks called Vincent before sunrise and said the sentence no one at Moretti Tower expected to hear. Emily did not come to work. Vincent stood beside the windows of his penthouse, watching snow drift between the buildings. Call her. We did. Her phone is off. Send someone to her apartment. Daniel was silent for half a second. I am already here. Vincent reached for his coat. 20 minutes later, he entered Emily's apartment and immediately knew something was wrong. The bed was neatly made. Her car keys rested beside the door. Her passport remained inside the kitchen drawer. Her wallet sat beside an untouched cup of coffee. Emily had not packed clothes. She had not withdrawn money. She had not told her father, her sister, or anyone at Moretti Tower that she planned to leave. On the kitchen table sat a small brass locker key and a handwritten note. If Vincent finds me before he finds the truth, an innocent man loses everything. Vincent read the sentence twice. Who is the innocent man? Daniel asked. I do not know. Then Emily expected you to figure it out. Vincent looked around the apartment. For 7 years, Emily had managed his schedule, remembered every confidential meeting, and noticed problems before anyone else knew they existed. She did not make careless decisions. If she had vanished, she had done it for a reason. Daniel opened his tablet. The last confirmed footage shows her entering a diner on West Madison Street at 2:13 this morning. When did she leave? She did not. Vincent looked at him. Explain. The front camera shows her entering. The rear camera shows no exit. The kitchen entrance was locked. No vehicle picked her up. She walked into that diner, and after 2:13, she disappeared. By 6:45, Vincent had activated every private contact he trusted. Transportation companies were asked to flag unusual reservations. Hotel managers received Emily's photograph. Corporate security teams began reviewing private camera networks. Drivers, building managers, and business partners were told to report anything connected to her. Vincent did not control Chicago, but before 7:30, hundreds of people across the city were looking for one woman. Daniel watched the operation expand across the security screens. You are moving too fast. She has been missing for hours. The note says finding her first will hurt someone else. Vincent turned toward him. I am not leaving Emily somewhere alone because of a sentence on a kitchen table. Maybe that is exactly what she expected you to say. Vincent ignored him. At 8:17, a private parking garage reported a woman matching Emily's description entering a commuter station near downtown. By 8:30, the lead was false. At 9:05, a hotel clerk claimed Emily had checked in under another name. Wrong woman. At 9:40, Daniel received security footage from the diner. Vincent watched Emily enter beneath fluorescent lights, order tea, and sit alone near the back wall. For 12 minutes, she did nothing. Then Emily slowly lifted her eyes and looked directly into the camera. She reached into her coat, removed a folded piece of paper, and held it where the lens could see. Daniel enlarged the image. 3 words were written across the page. Stop looking for me. The security room went silent. Vincent stared at Emily's face on the frozen screen. She did not look frightened. She looked disappointed. And for the first time that morning, Vincent understood the possibility he had refused to consider. Emily was not lost somewhere in Chicago. She was hiding from him. 7 years earlier, Emily Parker had learned something about Chicago that Vincent Moretti never understood. Buildings did not remember people. People remembered people. On her first morning at Moretti Tower, Emily arrived at 6:20 with a second-hand leather briefcase, a navy suit she had purchased on sale, and enough money in her checking account to cover 11 days of expenses. By noon, she knew the names of the security guards in the lobby. By Friday, she knew which custodian worked 2 jobs to help his daughter finish college, which delivery driver always brought coffee for the receptionist, and which hotel clerk could solve a reservation problem faster than any executive with a corporate account. Vincent noticed none of this. He noticed that Emily never lost documents, never forgot appointments, and never allowed unnecessary problems to reach his office. Within a year, he stopped checking his calendar because she had already checked it twice. Within 3 years, Emily knew almost every person who quietly kept Vincent's world moving. Restaurant servers called her when important clients arrived early. Drivers warned her about traffic before navigation systems updated. Nurses at the private clinic trusted her, Because she remembered their names and never treated them like servants. Building managers answered her calls because Emily asked about their families before asking for favors. Vincent had influence because people feared disappointing him. Emily had influence because people trusted her. The difference seemed small until the morning she disappeared. At 10:15, Vincent stood inside the security room while dozens of private camera feeds covered the walls. Daniel Brooks placed a map of Chicago on the main screen. We have checked every hotel connected to our business network. Check them again. We have reviewed private transportation records, parking garages, and corporate security footage. Then expand the search. Daniel looked at him. You still do not understand. Vincent turned. Explain it. Emily spent 7 years building relationships with people you never noticed. If she asked a diner waitress not to remember her, would that woman call you? Vincent said nothing. If a custodian opened a service entrance for her, would you know? If a bus driver recognized her and chose not to report it, how many cameras would help us? Vincent looked at the map. For the first time, Chicago appeared larger than his network. Across the city, Emily moved through ordinary places Vincent had never needed to understand. She drank coffee in a neighborhood bakery where the owner knew her father. She charged her phone inside a public library where she had once helped a librarian resolve an insurance problem. She rode a commuter train using cash and sat beside workers returning from overnight shifts. Nobody asked questions. Nobody photographed her. Nobody considered her suspicious. Emily was not invisible. She was protected by years of kindness Vincent had mistaken for wasted time. At 11:40, Daniel received another lead. A hotel employee claimed Emily had entered through a service entrance near Michigan Avenue. Vincent ordered security teams toward the location. 10 minutes later, they found an empty room and a handwritten note beneath a glass of water. You keep searching places you own. Try remembering the people you ignored. Vincent read the message without speaking. Daniel watched him carefully. She is teaching you something. She is wasting time. No, she is buying it. Vincent looked up. For what? Daniel placed a personnel file on the table. Michael Reeves, accounting department, terminated 6 days earlier for allegedly stealing confidential data. Daniel opened the access records. Emily reviewed his dismissal file the night before she disappeared. Vincent stared at Michael's photograph. Find him. Daniel did not move. That may be exactly what she does not want. Vincent looked again at the note from Emily. An innocent man loses everything. For 7 years, Emily had known the people inside Vincent's city better than he ever had. Now she was somewhere among them, trusting ordinary strangers to protect her while Vincent stood surrounded by screens, money, and influence. And for the first time, the name Michael Reeves gave him something more dangerous than a location. It gave him someone to blame. 6 days before Emily disappeared, she stayed at Moretti Tower until nearly midnight because one number refused to make sense. Michael Reeves had been terminated that afternoon after an internal investigation accused him of copying confidential accounting records. The evidence appeared simple. His employee credentials had accessed a restricted server at 8:27 on Tuesday evening. The stolen files were transferred 27 minutes later. Charles Bennett, the chief compliance officer, had signed the report recommending immediate termination. Vincent approved it in less than 5 minutes. Emily would have forgotten the case if she had not seen Michael that Tuesday night. At 8:27, he had been standing beside her in the lobby of a hospital nearly 9 miles from Moretti Tower. His wife had undergone emergency surgery, and Emily had delivered insurance documents the company needed to process additional medical leave. Michael had thanked her at 8:31. Emily remembered because Vincent had called 4 minutes later asking why she was not at the office. She opened Michael's security records again. 27 minutes were missing from the internal camera logs. No footage showed Michael entering the restricted floor. No footage showed him leaving. Only his credentials appeared in the system. Emily checked the access history 3 times. Then she found something stranger. The security log had been corrected 12 hours after Michael was terminated. Someone with senior compliance authority had reopened the file. Emily printed the timestamps and locked them inside her desk. The next morning, she asked Charles Bennett about the missing footage. He barely looked up from his coffee. Systems fail. For exactly 27 minutes? Coincidences happen. Emily held his gaze. Michael says he was not here. Charles smiled. People say many things after losing a 6-figure salary. I saw him at the hospital. For the first time, Charles stopped smiling. Then perhaps you should let investigators do their jobs. The investigation is closed. Exactly. Emily left his office with the certainty that she had asked the right question to the wrong person. Over the next 4 days, she quietly reconstructed Michael's final month at Moretti Tower. She found accounting transfers divided into amounts small enough to avoid automatic review. She found approval codes issued while Michael was on medical leave. She found 3 reports Charles had personally removed from routine audits. But none of it was enough. Suspicion was not proof, and Emily knew what Vincent would do if she brought him an incomplete accusation. He would confront Charles. Charles would destroy whatever remained. Michael would stay guilty in the eyes of everyone who mattered. On Sunday evening, Emily visited Michael at a neighborhood coffee shop. He looked older than he had 6 days earlier. "My new employer withdrew the offer," he said. "Someone told them I stole data." Emily lowered her voice. "Did you ever access the restricted accounting server?" "Never." "Did Charles ask you to approve unusual transfers?" Michael looked toward the window. "3 times. I refused." Emily understood. Michael had not been fired because someone believed he was guilty. He had been framed because he had noticed something. That night, Emily returned to Moretti Tower and searched the archive compliance schedule. At 1:17 in the morning, she found the connection. Every suspicious transfer matched a private meeting Charles had arranged outside the official calendar. Emily copied the records onto an encrypted drive. Then she noticed a small red light above the office door. The security camera was active. Someone had restored access to the floor remotely. Emily closed the file and removed the drive. Her phone rang. Charles Bennett. She did not answer. A message appeared seconds later. "Working late again, Emily?" She stared at the screen. Another message followed. "You should be careful whose problems you make your own." Emily looked toward the dark windows of Chicago and finally understood that Michael was no longer the only person in danger of losing everything. If she told Vincent too soon, he would act before she could prove the truth. If she stayed, Charles would know exactly where to find the evidence. Emily picked up her coat, turned off the office light, and made the decision that would leave the most powerful man in Chicago searching an entire city for the one woman who had finally learned she could not trust him with the truth. By noon, Vincent had turned his private network into a search operation so large that Daniel Brooks stopped calling it a search. Hotels connected to Moretti companies were reviewing guest arrivals. Private transportation firms were checking reservations. Corporate security teams across downtown Chicago were comparing camera footage against Emily's photograph. Building managers, drivers, restaurant owners, and business contacts received the same instruction. Report anything unusual. Vincent stood inside the security room watching hundreds of screens while every lead disappeared within minutes. Emily had used cash. She had avoided company vehicles. She had moved through neighborhoods where Vincent owned nothing and knew almost no one. "Expand the camera reviews south and west," Vincent said. Daniel looked away from his monitor. "We are already reviewing more footage than we can process." "Then hire more people." "That is not the problem." Vincent turned toward him. "Emily is somewhere in this city, and every door you close forces her to find another one." Vincent's expression hardened. "She left because Charles Bennett threatened her. She left because she believed you would react exactly like this." Vincent ignored him. At 12:47, a hotel manager near Michigan Avenue reported that a woman resembling Emily had entered through a service corridor. Vincent sent 2 security teams. The woman was a visiting accountant from Milwaukee. At 1:20, a transportation company flagged a cash reservation under the name Parker. Wrong passenger. At 2:15, a private camera showed a woman in a navy coat entering a commuter station. By the time security arrived, she was gone. Daniel placed both hands on the table. "Stop. No, you are not finding her. You are frightening everyone who might help her." Vincent looked at the city map glowing across the wall. More red markers appeared every hour. Hotels, garages, train stations, office buildings, places Emily might have visited, places she had never seen. "If she needs protection, she should come to me." Daniel stared at him. "That sentence is the reason she will not." The room went silent. Across Chicago, Emily sat inside a small community center on the west side, using an old computer in a public resource room. A retired librarian named Margaret Lewis had given her the temporary access card without asking questions. Emily opened the encrypted records she had copied from Moretti Tower. Charles had hidden the transfers carefully, But he had made one mistake. Every payment passed through companies connected to the same legal consultant. Emily needed the consultant's financial records before she could prove Charles had controlled the entire scheme. Her phone remained off. She knew Vincent would be searching transportation systems, hotels, and private cameras. What she had not expected was how quickly his search would affect ordinary people. Margaret entered the room carrying tea. Two men came asking whether I had seen you. Emily looked up. What did you tell them? That people who ask questions without introducing themselves usually do not deserve answers. Emily almost smiled. Then her expression changed. Vincent was expanding the search faster than she could collect evidence. Every person who helped her risked becoming part of his investigation. She could not allow that. At 3:38, Emily walked into a small grocery store with a private security camera connected to a business network Daniel was monitoring. She stood beneath the camera and looked directly into the lens. She removed a folded page from her coat. Stop looking for me. Then she turned the paper over. There was another sentence. Every door you close protects the man you should be investigating. At Moretti Tower, Daniel froze the image. Vincent read the message twice. She knows we are watching. She wants you to stop. Vincent looked toward the map. Or she wants more time. Daniel nodded. Then give it to her. Vincent remained silent for several seconds. Then a security analyst called from across the room. We found Michael Reeves. Vincent turned. Where? A temporary accounting office 12 miles north of downtown. Daniel stepped forward. Do not do this. Vincent reached for his coat. Emily said an innocent man would lose everything. Exactly. Then Michael knows something. Or he is the innocent man. Vincent stopped at the doorway, but did not turn around. Fear had been building inside him since 6:10 that morning, and fear had always become control before Vincent knew how to name it. Bring Michael to me, he said. Daniel's face tightened. Vincent, now. As the order moved through the room, Emily sat alone at the community center, unaware that the man she had disappeared to protect had just become the center of Vincent Moretti's search. And every mile Vincent moved closer to Michael Reeves pushed him farther from the truth. At 4:10 that afternoon, Michael Reeves sat inside a temporary accounting office with a cardboard box beneath his desk and 3 unanswered messages from recruiters on his phone. He had spent 6 days trying to convince strangers that the accusations against him were false. Every conversation ended the same way. Someone promised to call back. Nobody did. When 2 representatives from a private security firm entered the lobby asking for him, Michael understood that losing his job had only been the beginning. 40 minutes later, Vincent stood inside Emily's apartment, holding the brass locker key she had left on the kitchen table. Daniel Brooks remained near the door. She told you not to open whatever this belongs to, Daniel said. She told me an innocent man would lose everything if I found her before I found the truth. And you still do not know which man she meant. Vincent looked at the number engraved on the key. Locker 312. A transit station downtown had matching storage lockers. Daniel stepped closer. Wait until we understand why she left it. Vincent closed his hand around the key. Waiting has not brought Emily back. 1 hour later, the locker door opened. Inside were printed access records, copies of suspicious financial transfers, Michael's termination report, and a photograph of Emily standing beside Michael at the hospital on the night his credentials had accessed the restricted server. The evidence was incomplete. Vincent saw Michael's name repeated across dozens of pages. He saw private account numbers, unauthorized transfers, and handwritten notes connecting Michael to meetings Vincent had never approved. What he did not see was Emily's unfinished analysis showing that Charles Bennett had manipulated the records. Fear filled the missing spaces. Michael helped her disappear, Vincent said. Daniel shook his head. You do not know that. His name is everywhere. Because Emily was investigating what happened to him. Vincent turned toward him. Or because she discovered he was involved. Daniel looked at the photograph. She left this to prove he was not at Moretti Tower. But Vincent had already made his decision. By sunset, Michael's temporary employer suspended him after receiving questions about the investigation. A professional association postponed his membership review. 2 recruiters stopped returning his calls. Vincent did not order anyone to destroy Michael's reputation. He did not need to. In his world, suspicion traveled faster than evidence. At 7:30, Michael sat alone inside his car outside the accounting office. His wife called. The school called me today, she said quietly. Someone asked whether the accusations against you were true. Michael closed his eyes. I will fix this. How? Michael had no answer. Across the city, Emily sat inside the public library reading financial records obtained through the legal consultant's archive disclosures. She finally found what she needed. Charles controlled 3 shell companies connected to every suspicious transfer. She copied the records, checked the timestamps, and prepared to send them to an independent investigator. Then Margaret Lewis approached with a local news article open on her phone. Is this the man you are helping? Emily read Michael's name. The article mentioned renewed questions about his dismissal and potential involvement in a corporate data investigation. Her face went still. Vincent had found the locker. Worse, he had misunderstood it exactly as she feared. Emily turned on her phone for the first time that day. 27 missed calls appeared. She ignored them and dialed Vincent directly. At Moretti Tower, Vincent answered before the second ring. Emily, what did you do to Michael? Vincent stood. Where are you? Answer me. I found the evidence you left. You found unfinished evidence. Vincent became silent. Emily's voice remained calm, but disappointment sharpened every word. I disappeared because I was afraid you would do exactly this. I was trying to protect you. You do not protect people by destroying everyone standing near them. Michael may be involved. Michael was framed. Vincent looked toward Daniel. How do you know? Because I finished the investigation you interrupted. The security room went silent. Emily continued. Charles Bennett controlled the transfers. He altered Michael's credentials. He removed the camera footage. And while I was trying to prove it, you gave Charles exactly what he needed. Another innocent man to blame. Vincent looked at the city map glowing across the wall. Hundreds of people had followed his orders since morning. Hotels had searched rooms. Companies had checked records. Security teams had chased leads across Chicago. He had locked every door he could reach, and somehow the guilty man was still inside his own building. Emily, come back. No, the answer was quiet. Final. Then tell me where you are. You still do not understand. The call ended. Vincent remained motionless with the phone in his hand. Daniel looked at him. What now? Vincent stared at Michael's photograph on the table and finally saw what Emily had been trying to show him from the beginning. His power had not failed because it was too weak. It had failed because he had used it before he understood the truth. For nearly a minute after Emily ended the call, Vincent said nothing. The security room remained filled with glowing maps, camera feeds, and reports from people searching a city that no longer needed to be searched. Daniel Brooks stood beside the table, waiting. Stop everything, Vincent finally said. Daniel looked at him. Everything. The hotel checks. Transportation alerts. Private camera reviews. Security teams. Tell every business contact that the search is over. Emily is still missing. Vincent looked at Michael Reeves's photograph. No. Emily knows exactly where she is. I am the one who has been lost. Within 30 minutes, Vincent's network began withdrawing from the city. Hotel managers received instructions to delete Emily's photograph from internal alerts. Transportation companies stopped flagging reservations. Security teams returned to Moretti properties. Vincent ordered his legal department to contact Michael's temporary employer and every organization that had received questions about him. This time, Vincent did not. Ask them to erase the consequences quietly. He instructed the company to admit that the renewed suspicion had been based on incomplete information. At 9:15, Vincent met Michael inside a private conference room at Moretti Tower. Michael remained standing. If you brought me here to ask where Emily is, I do not know. Sit down. I would rather stand. Vincent nodded. Then I will stand too. Michael looked surprised. Vincent placed the incomplete records on the table. I opened a locker Emily left behind. I misunderstood what I found. I allowed suspicion connected to my organization to damage your employment and reputation. Michael stared at him. Allowed. Vincent held his gaze. Caused. The room went silent. I was wrong. Michael looked toward the windows. My wife is afraid our children will hear about this at school. My attorneys will provide written corrections to every organization contacted. Your lost income and documented expenses will be compensated. An independent firm will review your original termination. Michael turned back. And if the review proves I was innocent, your record will be restored publicly, and Charles Bennett's actions will be referred to law enforcement with the evidence Emily collected. You expect that to fix everything? No, Vincent answered immediately. I expect it to begin repairing what I damaged. After Michael left, Vincent returned to the security room. Daniel had received confirmation that the search operation had ended. Charles Bennett was still inside Moretti Tower, unaware that Emily had completed the evidence against him. "Do we confront him?" Daniel asked. Vincent looked toward Charles's office on the security monitor. The old answer came quickly. "Call him upstairs. Demand the truth. Control the outcome." Vincent shook his head. "No. Preserve the records. Restrict access to the relevant systems without alerting him. Send everything we legally have to outside counsel and independent investigators. Let them decide the next step." Daniel studied him. "That is not how you usually handle betrayal. That is why Emily left." At 11:40, Vincent entered his office alone. Emily's desk outside the glass wall remained empty. He opened his phone and recorded one message. "Emily, I stopped the search. Michael met with me tonight. I admitted what I did, and I have started correcting it. Charles will be investigated through independent legal channels. I will not search for you again. I will not ask anyone to report where you are. If you return, it will be because you chose to. If you never return, I will still finish what should have been done before you had to disappear." Vincent sent the message and placed the phone on his desk. Across Chicago, Emily sat beside a library window as the voicemail ended. She listened to it again. No demand. No question. No order hidden inside an apology. Margaret Lewis placed a cup of tea beside her. "Are you going back?" Emily looked at the evidence folder on the table. "Not tonight." "Do you trust him now?" Emily watched snow begin falling over the streetlights. Trust is not rebuilt because someone finally says the right thing. She closed the folder. It is rebuilt when they keep doing the right thing after nobody is watching. 3 days passed. Vincent did not search for her. He did not call again. Michael's suspension was lifted pending independent review. Formal corrections were issued. Charles's system access was restricted through documented compliance procedures. On the fourth morning, at 8:27, the private elevator doors opened on the 42nd floor of Moretti Tower. Vincent looked up from his desk. Emily Parker stepped into the office carrying a thick evidence folder. She walked to the conference table and placed it in front of him. "You have 20 minutes, she said. "You will listen without interrupting me." Vincent looked at the chair across from him. Then he sat down. "I am listening." Emily opened the evidence folder at 8:28 and began with the 27 missing minutes. Vincent sat across from her without touching his phone. Daniel Brooks remained near the conference room door, while 2 independent investigators joined through a secure video connection. Michael's credentials were copied through an administrative override, Emily said. The override came from compliance. Vincent looked toward the documents, but said nothing. Emily placed 3 financial records on the table. Charles divided unauthorized transfers among companies that appeared unrelated. Each amount remained below the threshold for automatic review. Then he removed reports that might have connected them. She turned another page. Michael noticed the pattern and refused to approve 3 transactions. 6 days later, his credentials appeared on the restricted server while he was at the hospital with his wife. Vincent's jaw tightened. Emily continued. Charles needed someone believable to blame. Michael had access, financial responsibilities, and enough family pressure to make resignation look easier than fighting. 20 minutes passed. Vincent did not interrupt once. When Emily finished, he looked toward the investigators on the screen. "Do you have enough to proceed?" "Enough for a formal investigation and preservation requests," one replied. "Then proceed." Emily studied him. "You are not going to confront Charles." Vincent looked at her. "Would that help the investigation?" "No, then I will not." Before noon, outside counsel issued preservation notices. Charles's access to sensitive systems remained restricted under documented compliance procedures. The evidence was transferred to investigators and appropriate law enforcement contacts for independent review. Vincent did not announce Charles's guilt. He did not use his influence to decide the outcome before the facts were examined. He waited. That afternoon, Michael returned to Moretti Tower for the independent review of his termination. Emily met him in the lobby. "I should have found the truth sooner," she said. Michael shook his head. "You were the only person who looked." Vincent approached from across the marble floor. Michael's expression changed. Vincent stopped several feet away. "The company has completed its preliminary review. Your termination was based on manipulated evidence." Michael remained silent. "Your employment record will be corrected immediately. You will receive back pay and compensation for documented losses caused by our actions." A written statement will be sent to the organizations that received inaccurate information. And Charles? Michael asked. Independent investigators will decide what happens next. Michael looked surprised. You are leaving that decision to someone else? Vincent glanced at Emily. I am learning to. 2 weeks later, the investigation confirmed that Charles had manipulated access records, concealed financial transfers, and framed Michael to protect himself. The matter moved through legal channels. Michael's name was cleared. His former employer offered him his position back. He declined. Instead, he accepted a temporary advisory role helping outside investigators understand weaknesses inside Moretti's compliance systems. Emily returned to work, but not to her old routine. She no longer arrived before sunrise to solve every problem Vincent refused to see. She attended meetings only when her role required it. She left the office on time. Vincent asked before adding responsibilities to her schedule. One evening, he found her standing beside the windows, looking over Chicago. Are you staying? He asked. Emily turned. For now. Vincent nodded. What would make you leave? If this place goes back to being what it was. And what would make you stay? Emily looked toward the conference room where Michael and Daniel were reviewing the new oversight proposals. Knowing that people can tell the truth here without disappearing first. Vincent absorbed the words in silence. Emily picked up her coat and walked toward the elevator. I am leaving at 5:30, she said. There are still 3 meetings on the calendar. Vincent looked at the schedule. 6 months earlier, he would have expected her to stay. I will handle them. Emily smiled faintly. The elevator doors opened. As she stepped inside, Vincent looked around the 42nd floor and understood that bringing Emily back had never been the real victory. The real test was whether he could change the world she had returned to. Over the next 3 months, Vincent discovered that changing an organization was easier to announce than to practice. New compliance procedures slowed decisions he once made in minutes. Independent reviewers questioned contracts his executives considered untouchable. Employees submitted confidential reports about managers who had spent years believing loyalty meant silence. Some senior leaders complained that Moretti companies were becoming weak. Vincent listened without ending their careers. That surprised them more than anger would have. Emily watched every change carefully. She had returned to Moretti Tower, but she had not returned to being the woman who quietly carried responsibilities nobody else wanted. At 8:30 each morning, she entered the office. At 5:30, she left. When Vincent placed unnecessary work on her desk, she returned it. When executives attempted to bypass the new reporting procedures, she documented it. Vincent never asked her to ignore a rule because of his position. One Friday afternoon, Emily entered his office carrying a proposal. I want to create an independent ethics and employee protection office. Vincent looked up. Inside the company? Funded by the company, but not controlled by you. Vincent leaned back. Who controls it? An independent board. Employees can report misconduct without going through management. The office can review internal records and refer evidence to outside investigators. And you want to lead it? Yes. Vincent looked through the proposal. A year earlier, he would have rejected any organization he could not control. 3 months earlier, he might have demanded a permanent seat on the board. Now he asked one question. What do you need from me? Emily placed a second document on his desk. Funding. Legal independence. Written authority to investigate every Moretti company, including decisions made by you. Vincent looked at her. Including me? Especially you. The room became silent. Vincent read every page. Emily waited. If I sign this, he said, you will no longer be my secretary. That is correct. You will be able to investigate my decisions. Yes. And I cannot remove you because I dislike the outcome. That is the point. Vincent looked toward the desk outside his office where Emily had worked for 7 years. For most of that time, he had believed her loyalty belonged to him because she stayed. Then she disappeared, and he learned how little he understood about the woman who had protected his world from consequences he never saw. Vincent signed the document. When do you start? Monday. Emily took the papers. You already planned this before asking me. I prepared for the possibility that you might finally make the right decision. Vincent almost smiled. And if I had refused, I would have left. He nodded. I know. On Monday morning, Michael Reeves entered the new office on the 38th floor as its first compliance advisor. Margaret Lewis accepted a position on the Community Advisory Board. Daniel Brooks established independent security procedures that prevented executives from altering records without review. Emily moved her belongings from the desk outside Vincent's office into a smaller room with her own name on the door. At 5:25 that evening, Vincent found her packing the second-hand leather briefcase she had carried into Moretti Tower 7 years earlier. "Does it feel different?" he asked. Emily looked around the office. "Yes. Better. Mine." Vincent understood the difference. Emily closed the briefcase and walked toward the elevator. "There is a board meeting tomorrow at 9. I will be there. You are not required to attend." Vincent looked at her. "I know." Emily smiled faintly. The elevator doors opened. Before stepping inside, she turned back. "Vincent, the hardest part starts now." "What part?" "Proving you changed when nobody is afraid to tell you that you are wrong." The doors closed. Vincent remained in the hallway, surrounded by offices filled with people who now had permission to question him. For the first time, he did not see that as a threat to his power. He saw it as the only reason his power deserved to survive. 6 months later, Vincent arrived on the 38th floor at 8:45 in the morning and stopped outside a conference room filled with people who no longer became silent when they saw him. Employees, independent board members, community advisors, and compliance specialists were discussing the first annual report from the Ethics and Employee Protection Office. Vincent entered quietly and took an empty chair near the end of the table. Emily stood at the front of the room, beside Michael Reeves. The second-hand leather briefcase rested beneath her chair, but everything else had changed. She was no longer carrying Vincent's schedule. She was carrying a report that examined decisions made across every Moretti company, including his own. "We received 83 confidential reports during our first 6 months," Emily said. 21 required formal investigations. 9 resulted in management changes. 4 were referred to outside authorities. Every employee who reported misconduct remains employed unless they chose to leave. Vincent listened. 1 year earlier, he would have considered those numbers evidence of disorder. Now he understood they proved people finally believed someone would listen. Emily continued. "The most important result is not how many cases we investigated. It is how many employees came forward before the damage became permanent." A board member questioned the cost of the program. Another challenged the independence of outside reviewers. Vincent disagreed with both arguments, but he remained silent until Emily looked toward him. "Do you have something to add?" Vincent nodded. "Only after everyone else finishes." The room became quiet for a different reason. People were not afraid. They were surprised. 20 minutes later, Vincent spoke. He supported additional funding and requested that his own executive decisions remain subject to the same review standards as everyone else. The proposal passed without opposition. After the meeting, Michael approached him near the windows. "I received an offer from another company," he said. Vincent looked at him. "Are you leaving?" "No. I decided to stay." "Why?" Michael glanced toward Emily, who was speaking with 2 employees near the conference table. "Because now I know staying is a choice." Vincent nodded slowly. He understood the answer better than Michael realized. That afternoon, Emily entered Vincent's office carrying a small cardboard box. "What is that?" he asked. "The last of my things from the old desk." Vincent looked through the glass wall toward the empty chair outside his office. He had never replaced her. "You should hire someone." "I have." Emily raised an eyebrow. "You hired a secretary?" "An executive assistant. Her name is Rachel Thompson. She starts Monday. She works 8 hours a day, has clearly defined responsibilities, and Daniel informed me that calling employees after working hours without an emergency is considered unnecessary." Emily smiled. "Daniel is becoming brave. Everyone is becoming brave." Vincent looked at her. Apparently, that was the point. Emily placed the box on the table. Inside was the brass locker key she had left behind the morning she disappeared. Vincent picked it up. "Why keep this?" "To remember why I left." "And why bring it here?" Emily looked toward the city beyond the windows. "Because I do not need it anymore." Vincent placed the key on the desk. "Do you trust me now?" Emily considered the question. "I trust what you do when nobody is watching." Vincent nodded. It was not forgiveness offered cheaply. It was something harder to earn and easier to lose. At 5:30, Emily collected her coat and walked toward the elevator. Vincent joined her. "My father is having dinner Sunday," she said. "Michael and Margaret are coming." Vincent looked at her. "Is that an invitation?" "It is an opportunity to arrive on time." The elevator doors opened. Vincent almost smiled. I will be early. Emily stepped inside, then turned. Do not be too early. The doors closed between them. Vincent stood alone in the hallway and looked through the windows at Chicago. 6 months earlier, he had searched hotels, stations, cameras, and streets because he believed enough power could bring one person back. He had been wrong. Emily returned only after he stopped closing doors and learned to leave one open. And that day, the most powerful man in Chicago finally understood that respect is not measured by how many people obey when you speak. It is measured by how many people feel safe enough to tell you when you are wrong.